How to avoid divorce. Avoid long exposure to your partner. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Pleasure Trove, the series where we dive into stories in the news and in culture around sexuality, love and relationships. And before we get into it, if you are not subscribed already, why not? I make new videos about sex and relationships every week, so hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you're notified when I post a new video. Obviously, with the world the way that it is right now, most of the news is dominated by coronavirus, and that seeps in to Pleasure Trove news as well. Fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know, hopefully you find this information useful or interesting, and maybe it will help some people. So one of the biggest and most crucial things that is happening, which I haven't been able to find a way to talk about on social media because I just felt so overwhelmed by the entire thing and didn't really know how to help, but we are addressing it now, and it's that there's been a huge spike in calls to the National Domestic Abuse Helpline. For some people, staying at home means isolating with an abusive partner or an abusive family member. The Home Office recently launched a campaign to address this called the You Are Not Alone campaign, and the symbol of which is a palm with a heart print in the center of it. You may have seen some people on Instagram posting pictures like this in support of this campaign. And domestic abuse services are being given an extra £2 million from the government. And I believe this is on top of the charity package that's going out to lots of charities as well. So this is specifically for domestic abuse services. The charity Refuge run the National Domestic Abuse Helpline, which is free and available 24 hours a day. And also their website has lots of really useful information on there to know your rights, your options, and get support. The Home Office has said that if you are in immediate danger, then call 999, and if you can't speak, press 55. I just really hope that that message gets out there to the people who need to hear it, and they get the support that they need, and they know that they are not alone and that they do not have to be isolating with an abuser right now. On to some different news. There have been claims and predictions from divorce lawyers that divorce rates will go up when we come out of lockdown. This and babies. These are the things that people are predicting when we come out of lockdown. Basically, lots of corona babies, a new baby boom, and divorces. Obviously, couples are not used to spending this much time together, and in normal circumstances, I would say that a healthy relationship is one where you don't spend all of your time with that one person. And so this can put a huge strain on relationships. But it also just might be the case that it just brings to light pre-existing issues that before you could ignore and shove under the rug, but now it's just like you are faced with that. This is something that I found really interesting. Apparently, peak times for divorce lawyers is after periods of long exposure. So there are a lot of divorces coming through after the summer holidays, after the Christmas holidays, where married people are spending a lot more time than usual together. And I find that fascinating. And also a bit morbid, maybe. It's like how to avoid divorce. Avoid long exposure to your partner. Obviously, if you get married, hopefully the person that you're marrying is the one person who you can spend a lot of time with above like everyone else. But apparently there is such a thing as too much time and too much exposure to your loved ones. And then I also saw this news story from Japan, and I do not know how real it is, but basically a startup kind of similar to Airbnb is offering rental homes to couples to help them distance themselves during lockdown. So you can go and stay in this other rental property to get away from your partner for a while. I don't know what the lockdown rules are in Japan, but that just sounds wild to me. I have no idea if people are actually doing it. But I imagine that there's loads of like empty Airbnb properties right now. So now they're just like being offered up as like, hey, come stay here to get away from your husband or wife for a while. Wouldn't that be nice? Yikes. During this time, things that don't feel really urgent are obviously not taking a priority right now, and one of those things is sex education. That is one thing that I really care about. I know that there's not many teenagers who watch my content, and I also know there's not many parents who watch my content, but I do know that there's lots of teachers who watch my content because that does fall into the general age of people who watch my videos. So teachers, if you do want to be keeping up with any sex and relationships education in online classes, or you want to give some resources to parents so that they can have conversations with their kids at home, then I would highly recommend Sex Positive Families. It is an amazing resource. Check out their Instagram. There's just so many good nuggets on there, but then there's loads of resources on their website as well. And the website Bish UK, this is aimed at 14 plus and has loads of useful articles on there about healthy relationships, also specifically stuff around relationships and sex during COVID-19, during lockdown. And Bish also has a training site for teachers, for parents, with tons of resources there if you want to be continuing sex and relationships education at home. Parents are going to be spending a lot of time with their kids right now, so these may well be things that come up in conversation, but also it's necessary and good to be having these talks. Okay, let's move on to some stuff. I've got a pleasure trove book favorite for you today. I just finished Holly Bourne's The Places I've Cried in Public last night, and oh boy, it is a heavy YA read. It's about this girl, Amelie, who goes through a breakup, and it flashes back and forwards between post-breakup and then during the relationship, and she's tracing all of the places that she cried in public because of this boy causing her to cry for whatever reason. And she's trying to understand what the relationship was, why it ended, why she feels so broken, and ultimately it's a book about an abusive relationship. So it is really heavy. The way that Holly writes these stories, it just really hits you, and it is so believable. She is so good at planting these moments that are like these little red flags, but you can totally understand why the character in that moment thinks, oh my God, this person is amazing, they love me. But then you're also reading it as an outsider, just being like, oh no, honey, that's bad. And you're watching her like fall into this really abusive cycle. So just as a content warning, if you do plan on reading this book, a lot of emotional manipulation, controlling behavior, and rape. But it is a brilliant book, and Holly does such a great job of speaking to that difference between those emotional roller coaster relationships that feel amazing but then feel horrible, and then those like steady, safe, warm, good relationships that don't feel as exciting but feel secure. When I read this line, I immediately was like, stop everything, give me a pen and paper, I need to write this down so that I remember this. I'd chosen being whisked off my feet rather than the steady ground beneath them. And that just sums it all up. Although, can you really choose anything when you're being emotionally manipulated? And then also, shout out to my bookmark from the Vulva Gallery. Hilda, who is the creator of the Vulva Gallery and does all of these amazing illustrations of vulvas, sent me the book and then also a few little goodies, including this bookmark, and it is my new favourite bookmark. So thanks, Hilda. I have an Instagram favourite for you. This isn't someone new that I've just discovered. They're actually a friend of mine, and I've been following them on Instagram for I don't even know how long, and they were even on my podcast. It is Eva Bloom from What's My Body Doing? But I just wanted to give her a shout out because her Instagram is so good. She is like on it right now with the posts, really informative stuff about sex and about relationships. Her background is in sex research, so she is just like all about that information and nerding out around topics around sexuality. She's a bisexual girl, and everything that she does is just so damn inclusive. I don't really watch that many people's Instagram stories, but hers I watch because just the nuggets in there, but then also just they're really warm and funny and inviting and aesthetically pleasing. Big fan. Shout out to Eva. Go follow her on Instagram if you want lots more information about sex, about dating, about relationships. That is just really good and really inclusive. We love Eva. On to T of V. Last night I watched the new documentary on Netflix, A Secret Love. It's just a feature documentary, it's not a series. and it is about an old lesbian couple who only had recently come out to their family and their loved ones. They've been in a relationship and living together for like 65 years, but obviously it was a complete secret. No one knew that they were gay. The documentary is really sweet. I loved all of the backstory about their relationship. When I was at university, I studied history and I did a whole module on the history of homosexuality. And there was a point in it where we talked about the lack of sources. So it's like you can't really say that these women were gay who lived together and wrote really like loving letters to one another, because there was nothing that said, we are definitely in a relationship, we are a couple, we are married, we have sex, you know, like none of that stuff is there because they couldn't. And so a lot of historians have named these relationships romantic friendships. And I think if Terry and Pat had never come out to their family, that was definitely like a label that would have been used to describe them. But no, they are two gay women in a relationship with each other. One of the things that I found really fascinating was when they were going through a bunch of old stuff and they came across love letters that they'd written to each other, but the top and the bottom was torn off, which was the bit where they would have written, "Dear Terry, love Pat." But they ripped their names off and got rid of those because they were like, well, if something happens to one of us and someone finds these letters, then everyone would know, and we can't have everyone knowing. And I was like, whoa, the amount of things that they would have had to think about to do in order to hide the truth of their relationship. But weirdly, the documentary isn't just about their secret love and about them and then them coming out and their friends and family being really happy and supportive for the most part about it. There was also just this plot of the documentary, which is because they were old, they needed to be moving out of the house, and like lots of conflict and discussions with family about where they were going to live, what retirement home, who's going to look after them. And there was just all of this drama that I kind of thought was a bit unnecessary. Like I wanted more of like the history and the backstory of their relationship and like more of that stuff. But it was also a really interesting exploration of like what happens when you get older and like who looks after you. So that was interesting, but not what I expected. But it was a really sweet documentary and I would recommend it. And now we're on to the stuff section, which is basically where I don't know how to categorize something, so we just stick it in stuff and don't ask any questions. I want to recommend you a newsletter from journalist and writer Frankie Koockney. I realise I've never said her name out loud before, so Frankie, I hope I got your surname pronounced correctly. Frankie's newsletter is called The Overthinker's Guide to Sex, and she's a journalist, and in her work mostly covers topics around sex and relationships, and her newsletter is where you can basically hear her thoughts on different sexual topics that she wants to talk about. And the way that she describes it is the newsletter that aims to bring back a lot of the nuance back to conversations around sex and relationships. And I support that because nuance is very important and yes, is often missing when speaking online about things, when it's all about sensationalizing stuff and like getting that headline and getting those clicks and often having to be polarizing for views. Nuance doesn't get your views, my friends. I'm not sure how often she releases the newsletter. I think it might be monthly, but if you sign up, you basically just get a really interesting, kind of like an article basically, around a topic that she's exploring and has some thoughts on. So would recommend. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Pleasure Trove. If there's anything that you would like me to cover in future episodes, whether that be stuff or things that you see in the news, then please message me things on Instagram, tweet me things. I will be looking in those places and making note of them for the next episode. Maybe we'll be able to find some happier news in this field. If you'd like to support the work that I do and the content that I make, then please do check out the Common Room over on my Patreon. One of the things that I do over there is after an episode of Pleasure Trove comes out, I send people at the $5 tier and above a extra reading list basically of things that I was reading for this episode, but then also other things that didn't make it into the episode around sex and relationships. So if you're interested in getting like a bonus pleasure trove, kind of like newsletter with like lots of links and resources in it, then that is the place to get it. And they come out usually a day or so after these episodes come out. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!